Well, there's your problem.
Welcome to the channel, guys. My name is Graham Dorley, and today you join me on a really dumb adventure. You see, I bought a 2022 911 GT3 from Copart, but it's not just any Copart 911 GT3. This car has actually been crashed and salvaged twice. So the first time this vehicle was crashed was in August down in Texas. It looks like it hit a parking barrier. A facility picked up the car for about $123,000. It had damage in the front fascia, a little bit of the front bumper, but nothing too severe, right? So they rebuilt the vehicle, put it back on the road, and less than 100 miles later, it was crashed again. But this time, it went over something, looks to be a road barrier or something, and took out basically everything under the front crash rail. So the whole front subframe, the front, everything else. It launched the car up in the air and landed on the rear right before the front wheels, where it took out the rear suspension as well. So it's a very damaged car. And what's interesting is I've been following this Porsche GT3 for a while, actually several months, because I thought, you know what, I'm watching Tavares, I'm watching Matt Armstrong and the guys down in Tennessee with Goon Squad rebuilding these cars, and I'm like, that looks like a lot of fun and something that I think I could do. And not only that, but I'd bring you guys along for the journey. So I've been toying with this idea. Copart notified me that this car was coming up for auction, and I threw out a really low bid, thinking, I'm never going to get this car because I know how much these things go for even at auction. So much to my surprise, after I was running some errands, I got a notification saying that I had won the vehicle. And now I'm like, oh crap, having not really even seen this thing before, I now had a very crashed 2022 911 GT3 that I had to go pay for. So luckily it wasn't too far away, and that's where we're headed right now. We're gonna go down to the Copart facility in South San Jose, California. We're gonna check this thing out, pay for it, and get it brought back up so we can start this build. So if you're interested in following the progress, click that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, because I'm gonna be posting videos weekly as we bring this thing back to life. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Well, it's got 4 wheels. The tire just blew out. Welcome back. Today is day 2 of the GT3 build, and we're going to start by cleaning up the car. Now, I'm always a big fan of cleaning up your projects before you start work, and this car sat outside in the Copart lot for several months, getting covered in dirt, dust, and having wonderful little critters inside. So we're going to clean it up, and we're going to show you what's underneath. Well, there's your problem. After blood, sweat, and a lot of tears, we finally got the GT3 wrecked. So let's take a look and let's see just how bad this accident damage really is. I'm pretty sure at some point there was supposed to be a trunk. Usually there's something here. Perhaps this is the lightweight model. I don't know. Porsche might be trying some new engineering, but you can see that the majority of the impact actually went underneath the front bumper into the front of the car. And so we've got the impact going into the front steering gear, into the subframe, and then luckily the fuel tank, which is right here, actually stopped the car. The subframe's done, the wheels in the front are done, and actually pushed the wheels back into the rocker panel, the fender. So there's a little bit of damage down here that we're gonna have to take a look at. But you can actually see the frame rails are straight. So it didn't hit the crash structure in the car, which is up here. It missed it and tore off the entire frunk, which you still have a little bit here. Just gotta be careful because it's pretty sharp. And unfortunately, even though there's still a bit of a flange left here, we're gonna have to remove that entire front piece because as we dug into it a little more, you can see right in here, there is a crack. And this is a structural piece of the car that you really don't want to be starting to replace. You want to just go ahead and put a new front end on. Also because you've got an issue under here where the subframe mounts and this whole piece was torn off. So where the subframe actually bolts into the front end, you can see is pretty messed up. So while the passenger cell's okay, so we've got good integrity down here. So you can see that it's actually, when it hit the front of the car, it pushed the car up. And then as it was in the air, it then came back down on the back. So you can see these marks here where it landed on whatever it landed on, which is also this rear body flange. So this is actually where the body in white gets welded and riveted together. So we'll take a look at this. It doesn't, I mean, although it's bent up, it doesn't look that bad. When I was at the auction site, looking underneath the car, because the car was actually laying on its belly in Copart, we thought this was a hole in the floor pan. So I was pretty bummed that we would have to actually put a new floor pan in the back. But you can see it's actually the under tray. And while this is dented in, we're not gonna have to replace this. So the bummer here is it landed on the back by the gearbox. So we've got a bent sway bar going into the rear of the transmission. We've got a shield that's bent up. And I noticed when we was inside, it was a little hard to shift. And that's because we suspect the gearbox is actually pushed up. And so it's messing with the cables. And if we come back to the rear suspension, you can see here that all the arms are pretty bent because I imagine as it went over whatever it hit, it then jammed the rear wheel, pushing it back, bending the strut, bending the lower control arms, and pretty much wrecking this. As you can see, this clearly is not factory. But all in all, not as bad as I thought. And then you've got the passenger side. It looks like this may have actually been used to pull the vehicle out of wherever it was. The reason I suspect this is because you've got a fracture here and it's not even dirty. So given that this car sat for a while, you would expect a little bit more dirt. And so that may be more recent damage from the auction sites. These auction sites, by the way, are known for not taking particularly good care of the vehicles. So that is a tour of the GT3. So let's take a look. We're going to be undoing all the under trays. We're going to pull everything down and take a look, see what damage is underneath. Hopefully the engine and gearbox is okay. And there's nothing under here to the floor pan of the car or structurally. So let's take a look. All right, guys, let's start pulling off some of these fasteners here. Safety first, of course. Guys, remember, always wear safety glasses. I have girly hands, so I've always got gloves on. Oh. Okay, let's see. Was Porsche smart enough to allow you to take this off while on a lift? Because if you've ever owned a Lotus, you can't do that. Ah. Hey, it's off. Couple dents. Something may have bumped the floor, but not bad. It's like a stud may have been removed upon the accident. The good news is we see a lot of factory seam seal all over here with overspray from when it was painted. Factory primer. All the metal. Yeah, I suspect those holes are one of these guys missing. So we can probably weld some studs back in. All right, things are looking okay. Yeah, aside from the front end missing. Wow. Interesting discovery. This, see if we can get that to focus, is a piece of concrete. So clearly, our previous owner, we'll call the PO, ran into something, possibly a curb, which you can also see hit the car right here. Nice little concrete mark. So, crunch on the transmission bracket. We expected that given what we saw. So you can see this is pushed up. This whole piece is probably torqued. The good news is it doesn't seem like there's a lot of damage to the gearbox. There's a piece here, so get up there, right up here, a piece of the casting chipped off. So usually they put these in. It's a bit of strength, but it's also there when they cast these big pieces to help cool them off in the mold. So I'm not super worried about that, given where it is. Shift linkage seems to be okay. It's here, it was working. So my guess is it's not supposed to be like this against these brackets. So I'm assuming there's a little bit of twist here because of this. Nice little customization to the rear under tray. Next up, let's take this guy off. Let's take the rear valance off, and let's see what we got. Hey. Well, the rear supports, also oddly called a Panhard rod, which I feel like is not the correct term given this does not have a solid rear axle, but that's their name. I suspect these are more rear subframe brace. Either way, seems these are clearly bent, but the mounts to the body look okay. The front mount, although scraped, as we saw before, seems not too bad. So, got a little bit of a scrape. Bolts are still actually in where they should be, so that's good. If you look at the seam sealer here, again, I don't see a lot of damage. But let's come back to the motor. So, the engine actually looks pretty good, as I almost fall on the shield I just took off. So it doesn't look like there's any damage. You've got cast water pipes, seem okay. I don't see anything underneath. The headers look okay. So it looks like it was the underbody right where the sway bar was that took the big hits. All right, guys, we've had a really busy day. We got the GT3 up on the lift. We pulled off the under trays, inspected some of the damage, and we found out it's not quite as bad as we thought in some ways, and in others it might be a little worse. So we're gonna call it wraps for today, but up next, we're gonna get this thing on a battery tender. We're gonna power it up, see what we got going on inside, and then maybe we'll give it its first start. So stay tuned, click that subscribe button below if you wanna stay in on the action. We'll be doing about one video a week throughout this build. So stick with us and you'll get to see the whole thing. Bye for now.